Trade reports are escalating surrounding the Pittsburgh Penguins. A brand new report from Elliotte Friedman has revealed a new Penguins trade target. We're going to break down exactly who that target is, discuss what it means going forward, and also discuss Elliotte Friedman's report a little bit more in depth. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage that aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily NHL content. So if you're part of that 70%, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 8,000 subscribers. So thank you guys for your continued support. But Darius, we have a lot to go over today, and the Pittsburgh Penguins, they're a team that's been in a lot of trade talks as of late. They've been in a weird situation. Kyle Dubas is, of course, shopping a lot of players. He's getting into a lot of things. And a report dropped today from Elliotte Friedman revealing a huge update. So I think Pittsburgh has real interest in Hoglander. Meanwhile, the Penguins have shoppers for Drew O'Connor. And we're going to dive into both of these things, but obviously going to focus more on Hoglander here. I just want to get your thoughts before we dive into some of the more specifics. And again, there's some other things we're going to discuss as well, because quite frankly, the Penguins are shopping a lot of guys. They're really active in trade talks. There were reports earlier saying that they were probably going to be sellers, and now they're kind of looking to hedge their bets and be buyers to a degree. What are your thoughts on this report from Elliotte Friedman in his 32 Thoughts podcast?
Well, it's very interesting. We've already made a video on the channel about a potential Nils Hoglander to Pittsburgh Penguins video, and obviously Kyle Dubas has real interest in this player, and he absolutely should. On the Vancouver Canucks, this is a player that I think may no longer fit and could use and benefit from a change of scenery. So I think it's a very interesting fit. I think he would immediately help the Pittsburgh Penguins. This is a player that scored 24 goals last year, all of them coming 5-on-5, which is exactly what the Penguins need help with right now. They could use help in a lot of other categories, honestly. They could use help special teams, defense, goaltending, all of that. But he's a guy that, would bring exactly what they're looking for in their lineup. He's a good forechecker. Their team is very old and getting a little bit slower. They want to get younger, faster, more ferocious. So this is a guy who can help with that. The hockey IQ is there, but at times, doesn't do the, he's a little bit, takes some penalties, stuff like that. But he is a player that they should definitely be interested in. And Nick, Drew O'Connor is in a lot of trade rumors as well. But before we get to him, Hoglander is very attractive. As you see the cap hit here, $1.1 million for the rest of this season. This is something where they wouldn't have to go out of their way to make cap space or add any sweeteners or anything like that. So I think it's a very attractive trade and player for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And after this year, he is signed as well, $3 million. So he has a contract extension. They wouldn't have to worry about that. So I think it's a very interesting player. And if you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins lineup, Drew O'Connor is up there on we'll get to him in a second, like I mentioned, but he's up there on this second line right now. This is a third line player, I believe. And Hoglander coming in, he would get an opportunity with a player like Evgeny Malkin and Tomasino, who they just traded for as well. It's going to be a great opportunity for him if they do end up trading for this player.
Yeah, to go back to the cap space for a second, I think that's the big thing with the Pittsburgh Penguins. At this point, they're obviously a team that I think they're trying to both get better while also acquiring some younger assets and younger talent. That's exactly what Hoglander will provide in this case. And a $1.1 million cap hit, and we'll get into his stats here in a second. He's not having a phenomenal year, but he is coming off of a year that was very impressive for, of course, the Vancouver Canucks. And when you're looking at Kyle Dubas' plan going forward, you look at the stats and things like that here. Of course, he only has 5 points in 24 games. And you look at last season, he had, I believe, 36 points. He had a very solid season last year for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, this year, there's a couple things that are obviously going on with him. Like you mentioned, he's a good forechecker. He's a young player. He's only 23 years old. So you'd be acquiring a guy at probably his lowest price. Like, if you would have considered a trade last season for this player, it would have been a very much steeper, a very steep asking price. But now it's a lot cheaper for him, and he's only making $1.1 million, which is obviously a huge factor in all of this because, the cap is not getting, it's still getting very strict and things are going like that. But $3 million is the extension that kicks in starting next season. And when you're looking at that price, I think he fits in well with this forward group, especially for a guy that if you're buying low, he's kind of getting the doghouse effect from Rick Tocchet here. So I think if he gets a new, fresh scene, could work out for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Again, I don't think he's going to cost a ton of money. He is coming off of a very solid year. He is only 23, going to be turning 24 years old. But I think for a player that you can buy low on, there's not much. I don't think there's a better option than Hoglander at this point, and it's why the Canucks are shopping him. But it's also why, of course, the Pittsburgh Penguins are looking to trade him, and he's not going to cost a ton. And if you're the Canucks, I'm not saying they're looking to get rid of this guy fully, but he's clearly not He's had a stagnant development this season.
He could benefit from a change of scenery for sure. And I mean, when you look at the Canucks lineup, he is playing on the third line right now. He shouldn't be there. This is a player in a different system, a different organization, would be in the top six. And with Pittsburgh, I mean, I just brought it up. Like, there is a perfect spot for him right there on the left wing on the second line. He can absolutely slot in there. And I think the things that he could do with a retooled lineup of Tomasino and Malkin there on the second line with him, I think the sky is the limit for a player like this. But to get to Drew O'Connor for a minute, he is potentially, a player who can come back the other way in a trade, because I think the Pittsburgh Penguins do like this player. But right now he's kind of floating around. When you look at their lineup, he's playing second line minutes right now. That's not the best use for this player, and I think for the team anyway. So he's another guy that could be coming the other way. The Canucks also need some defense help right now. Filip Hronek is going to be out for an extended period of time because of getting surgery and an injury he sustained earlier this season, or just a couple games ago, I should say. But they need some defense help too. So I'll throw, maybe Pettersson out there as well from the Pittsburgh Penguins. That could be an option as well, but very, very interesting. But again, the Pittsburgh Penguins do have shoppers for Drew O'Connor. Now, these teams have not been named to this point by Elliotte Friedman, but they do have shoppers. So the fact that they have interest in Hoglander from Vancouver losing Hoglander would then need, a third line player there instead of maybe calling somebody out, maybe somebody more established, NHL ready. I think that that's a very interesting fit. It could be, it's not going to be a 1-for-1 swap, but I think that it could be something that, both teams have needs for each other, and it could be a very interesting trade there.
Yeah, and you're looking at two interesting guys, but when you're talking about Drew O'Connor, the question mark would become, like we've been talking about this whole video, like the tweet says here, would they actually want to move away from someone that they potentially see as a cornerstone of their team? Now, they're obviously going to do their due diligence shopping all of these players, and I'm not entirely sure that Kyle Dubas is going to want to do a trade framed around Hoglander for Drew O'Connor. Obviously, Drew O'Connor's 2 and a bit years older than Hoglander. But I asked you the question also, if you got it this far, you're watching the video, you got this far, let me know down below, or let us know, would you do a trade centered around this? What kind of assets would you give up if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins for a guy like Hoglander? Is it a Drew O'Connor type player, or is it some other asset? Because I still think that if they're acquiring a guy like Hoglander, I'm not entirely sold on the idea of giving up someone that could at least be a part of their future if he continues to develop a solid winger, 26 years old. He's not super old at this point. Still has some potential there. So little bit hesitant on that front. However, it makes sense why there's a lot of shoppers for Drew O'Connor. I'm just not entirely sold, like Jason says here, that the Penguins are going to want to give up him, especially in a deal when you're acquiring a guy who has some upside in Hoglander and you're trying to get younger.
I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, would you want to keep Drew O'Connor? Yes, there is a world where you would want to keep Drew O'Connor, and he could be a part of the future of the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if the Canucks say, hey, this is a player that could help the dynamic of our team, we want this player back in return for, Nils Hoglander, or maybe another asset or something like that. I think Hoglander makes your team better immediately if you're the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that's kind of what they want right now. I think they want to stay at least in the mix and not do a full rebuild, because it's going to be very difficult too with obviously their top guys, A, not wanting to leave, and B, you literally almost cannot trade them with no moving clauses and the money that they make. So it's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. But Nick, I mean, this is a really good player that would make the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think, really much better at this point in time. Immediately, he would have an immediate impact, and yeah, I think it's a very interesting fit.
Yeah, and I think some things are going to escalate surrounding this. Elliotte Friedman usually drops these tidbits, and rumors are going to start picking up, so make sure to keep you up to date on that. Let us know down below. If you're the Pittsburgh Penguins, do you do a deal centered around Hoglander? Let us know. See you guys later.